Hey, it's Sarah again. I am excited to have Carrie Jacobsen share her story with you today. She actually had a back injury and ended up having surgery to fix it, but it has actually impacted a lot of her life, not only through the short stint she was dealing with the pain, but she's now considering a lot of changes in her home and her future home with her husband and how they're going to live their life to not make her back hurt anymore or to create increased injury in the future. So it really goes to show that there is a lot of impact on the way we live our lives in our homes, and some of those come from short-term injury or illness. So I hope you enjoy the interview. Thanks for listening.
Okay. I'm Carrie Jacobsen. I'm 30 years old and I live in Harrisonburg, Virginia.
And what is your occupation?
I'm a teacher, sort of. I have been a full-time teacher, just sub now.
Cool. And then, so tell me a little bit about your illness, injury. How long have you lived with it?
Well, I injured my back originally in 2008. I was helping a friend move after having abdominal surgery and months after. But those muscles hadn't healed and I hurt something in my back and I've had flares ever since. But September of 2016, I ruptured the disc between L4 and L5. And wasn't able to get surgery for that until December, and it's still a healing process.
Yeah, definitely. So what did you experience like right after you realized that you hurt your back? Like what were your symptoms?
After the rupture, after the initial?
After the initial.
After the initial issue, was a lot of inflammation and pain in my low back. Not a lot of effect in my legs, but it made it hard to do normal things. And then it seems like every flare I had after that, it just progressively got worse.
Got worse and worse. That makes sense. And then once you actually ruptured it.
Well, that was excruciating pain. My left leg, the way it ruptured, it was pushing out and down and shoving the nerve that controls my left leg into the back of my spine.
Wow.
So I dealt with a lot of leg weakness and tingling and pain, and would have a hard time walking. And then in October, had the MRI and I had a CT epidural shot that actually made it worse.
Oh, wow.
And I wasn't able to stand up fully. I spent all of October, November, December hunched over, walking with a cane, when I could walk. And then in November, started just falling. My leg would just completely give out, and even with the cane, I couldn't catch myself. So that's when I had to stop teaching.
Sure.
I had been teaching from a beanbag chair.
Oh, gosh.
With all of my teaching material spread around me and my students going, "I'll get it for you, Miss Jacobsen, what do you need?"
Aw.
And then the pain just progressively got worse to the point where by the end of December, right before my surgery, I was sleeping 1.5, 2 hours a night because I was in so much pain and would just lay in bed shaking.
Wow. So I mean, it affected like every single part of your day.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it sounds like your students were very accommodating.
They were great, yeah.
Carrie also mentioned some other side effects of her back injury. The pain was so much more unbearable than she could imagine, and she oftentimes felt like she was in a fog because the pain was so bad.
Prior to me having this injury, I couldn't have comprehended the level of pain. I wouldn't have been able to understand what somebody dealing with this was going through because I just wouldn't have been able to remember that. But
because you hadn't experienced that before.
And I felt so bad because I would forget entire conversations that I'd had with people, because every ounce of my mental energy was going into survival and dealing with pain.
Sure.
So I remember a lot of that, but a lot of that time is just fog. As you know, my husband and my first Thanksgiving together and first Christmas together as a married couple, and I don't really remember very much of it.
Because you were in so much pain.
I was in so much pain.
Wow. Yeah.
Bits and pieces, but.
Yeah. So I guess, I mean, you always had seen other people like have back pain or lots of pain in general, and then until you really experience it, you're like, wow.
Yeah. And it
makes sense.
Because you don't understand necessarily the level of pain, I always felt like people thought I was just wimping out. Like I wouldn't go to home group, or I wouldn't do this or wouldn't do that because I was in too much pain. And I don't know that anybody actually felt that, but that's kind of how I felt. And it wasn't that I just couldn't.
Sure.
I wasn't physically able to do that.
Yeah. And at that point, it wasn't one of those things you could just like push through.
Right.
And like you would have paid greatly for it.
I attempted to push through for the Christmas Eve service. I had not been to church in a month. I was bound and determined that I was going to go because it was Christmas Eve and I wanted to, and I missed being at church, and Christmas music is my favorite. Those are my favorite hymns, and I always love being there for that. And that was a mistake. I was in so much pain and spasming so badly by the time I got home that my dear husband had to hold me onto the toilet so I would not fall off.
Oh, wow.
So I could use the bathroom. Because otherwise I would have fallen off.
Right.
I could not function by myself during that time.
Right. And so probably at that point you were like, I can't push myself anymore.
Unfortunately, my surgery was 4 days after that, so it wasn't too much longer. But
yeah. And then, so your surgery, how did that impact? Was it like an instant change?
Oh my word, yes. You know, you were in pain before when post-op pain feels like a walk in the park. I woke up and I was in pain and I was a little nauseous, and but they got me into the second phase of recovery when they let Ben come in, and after I'd eaten some food and whatever, they said, well, if you can get up and get dressed and go to the bathroom, we'll let you go home. And I stood up straight immediately for the first time in months and just started crying.
Oh, I'm sure.
From the relief of it.
Yeah.
And I think, especially after the groggy medicine wore off, Ben had a hard time keeping me in bed resting like I was supposed to for that month, because I felt so much better and there was so much I needed. Like, I need to get this done. I want to do this. I want to do that. I have time right now. Why can't I? Because I'm going to re-injure myself. But
Right, because you're recovering. Yeah. But there's so many things that you couldn't do during that time because you were in so much pain that you just wanted to.
I basically laid in bed and watched Netflix for 2 months.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure. So while you had the pain and you were waiting for your surgery, did you have to make any changes to your home to make it easier for you to do anything?
Yes. We added the seat that lifts up the toilet seat a little bit, which was very helpful for me because getting down that low and then pushing myself up, I mean, I was having to pull on things to try to get back up, and it was still really hard.
Sure.
So that was helpful. We ended up putting a chair in our shower because showering was nearly impossible, and I was falling. I was tripping getting in and out of the shower because I couldn't get my leg up high enough.
Because you had a tub, so you were stepping in.
Yeah, I was stepping into a tub. I had one of those little grabbers that I could get stuff off the floor, which is why I still use that.
Nice.
Especially for doing laundry.
Yes.
For sorting laundry. I think that's pretty much all we changed.
Because you had steps to get in your house.
I had a couple, but I wasn't going out that much, so it didn't really impact me, and I wasn't going down to the basement.
Sure.
When I would go out, I wasn't able to drive because our car was a manual, and if I can't use my left leg, I can't drive.
Right.
So I was getting rides to and from work, or when I was still working, and then when I wasn't, if I had to go to a doctor appointment or something, somebody was taking me, so I always had someone right there.
Sure.
To help me down the stairs.
So, man, that's a lot for, like, you just get married, and then you last year, and you're like...
We got married in July, and it ruptured in September.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's a lot. So I guess in the future, if there was anything that you would change in your home to make it more user-friendly, like, you know, if this happened again, or there was some other short-term thing, would there be anything that you would want to change?
So Ben and I have discussed at length if we could design our own home, how we would do it. And one of the things would be putting oven and washer and dryer higher up on the wall, because the bending and lifting heavy things is very difficult.
Sure.
And we're expecting our first child, and so the idea of bending all the way down over a crib to lift a heavier infant out, that hurts just thinking about it, because of where I would be bending is right where because that disc is degenerated, and I do have arthritis there. So he's talking about adapting that crib so that it opens from the front instead of me having to bend over.
Nice. So even just trying to design things to preserve what you have and not to make it worse.
Not to aggravate it. We've talked about making sure whatever home we end up with has a ground floor master bedroom. So that we don't have to worry about if something happens, me being on stairs, especially if I'm home by myself.
Sure. Yeah. Taking care of a kid.
Yeah. Yes.
So how did your back injury impact how you were able to do things for that short stint of time, like in your community for leisure, recreation? Like,
I couldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't really anything I could do. As long as I could, I would continue being involved in things like home group and things, but even then, after a while, I was just not able to do that.
Sure.
And even now, it's impacted a little bit. Honestly, probably mostly out of just fear and caution, like not unfounded fear. Like my favorite summer activity is kayaking, but I'm really nervous and hesitant to do that because that twisting and pulling motion is really, really bad for lower back injuries.
Sure. So did the surgeon give you any like precautions for the future or anything, or is that just kind of something in your mind that you're just like, I'm going to just be as cautious as possible?
That's more in my mind based on other things that he said. So we decided that it would be best for me not to teach full time anymore. Give my body a break, so we're going to have a baby. Because one of the things he said was teachers are in their top 3 occupations with bad and worsening back issues, especially lower back issues. It's teachers, truck drivers, and factory workers. And even as I'm subbing, after an hour on my feet, I can feel my back getting tired and tight and starting to hurt a little bit. But he did say there's always a chance this could herniate again. There's, if that happens, we'll deal with it then.
Sure.
May eventually even need to have those 2 vertebrae fused. He didn't want to do that so early though, because when you do that, it can weaken the ones on either side, and then eventually you have to get those fused, and then eventually
it's longer and longer.
It's not a good process.
Yeah.
So there's always that, is this going to re-rupture in the back of my brain? What am I going to do that's going to cause that?
Sure.
And trying to find a balance of living my life and doing active things that will build those muscles and build strength there without damaging them.
Yep, that makes sense.
Carrie also talked about how when people would look at her when she was going through her injury, most people would not realize that she had chronic pain going on, and her injury was technically invisible until they saw her walk or move around.
I mean, while I was actually injured, you could see, I was walking with a cane. If I went out, sometimes I just wanted to get out of the house.
Sure.
And so I would ride the little shopping scooters at, Costco or Target or wherever. And
right.
I would get a lot of because I'm so young, you don't usually see young people on scooters. But
yeah,
that was really the only time it was visible. And
Did you ever have to explain, did you ever feel like you had to explain to somebody, why you're riding the shopping cart?
I always felt like I needed to. Eventually the people, we're at Costco enough, the people got to, realize, oh yeah, she's been on it before, but I always felt like I needed to say, I've ruptured a disc and I can't really walk. Please, is it okay if I use this?
Yeah.
Because I felt weird about using it as a younger person who looks like she's probably indecent.
Right. We've gotten the same thing where we'll pull up into an accessible parking spot and we'll get people eyeing us like that. I'm like, well, they'll eventually see when I pull the wheelchair out of the car that we're supposed to be in this spot. But yeah, when you look young or you don't look like there's anything quote unquote wrong with you, then people often
get a little curious or judgmental before they know the full story.
And when I was sitting, I wasn't hunched over. As long as I was sitting down, I looked perfectly normal. And I had the cane in the basket, but unless you saw me getting on or off this thing and saw me hunched over and unable to stand up, then you really wouldn't know.
Sure. Yeah.
That anything was wrong.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people just deal with that in general. Just, you know, they like have something invisible that people don't see, and they just feel like they have to justify, like, I need this. When you had your back injury, did it impact relationships with others in any way?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we had the whole, like, I forget conversations ever happened. I forget that I ever even saw you thing. So I always struggled a little bit with that. I think the biggest impact would be on my marriage. That we had been married for a matter of months when this happened, and it wasn't necessarily a negative impact. Everybody talks about how hard the first year of marriage is, and it was.
Yeah.
But it wasn't relationally hard. It was physically hard. But during that time, like, my husband took such good care of me. And he would come home from working all day, come back and see me as I'm laying in bed, and, you know, say hi and visit with me for a minute, and then he'd go back in the kitchen and start making dinner, and he would take his phone and Google Chat video call me and put it up in a cabinet where I could see the whole kitchen, and I would lay in bed and we would sit there and talk while he made dinner, just so that I wouldn't have to be by myself any longer than necessary during the day.
Sure.
But he could still accomplish things.
Yeah. Well, and was that hard for you? Like, you're, you know, you wanting to do the cooking and, you know, do the laundry and do all of those things?
Yeah, it was. And Ben teases me that I've watched too many 1950s movies because I had this very defined idea of who I was going to be as a wife, and I was going to always have dinner on the table by a certain time and stay on top of the laundry.
Sure.
And, like to keep the house pretty clean, and that didn't happen. I mean, we had friends and my mother-in-law and sister-in-law and came and cleaned our house one day, that they would come and just clean, because it was a lot on Ben to be working all day and taking care of me, because I was requiring a fair amount of help. I wouldn't shower if he wasn't there.
Yeah.
Just different things like that. Plus keeping up with the house was just a lot on him.
And you're at home all day looking at everything that, like, you would like to get done, but just physically can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of drove me nuts.
I'm sure. No, it would be as well.
As you can see, even though Carrie has already had her surgery and she's gotten a lot better, she's still constantly thinking about her back and how that's going to impact her as a mother and as a wife. I think it's really important for people that are designing homes and looking at how people use their homes, that we all are going to age and we're all going to have something happen to us unexpected. And it's important to think about the things that we would need if even if it's a short-term illness, or if we're going to be dealing with a longer-term illness and having to stay in our homes and be as independent as possible for as long as we can. So thanks for listening to Carrie's story, and I hope it was helpful for you in learning more about how to make homes and communities more welcoming.